Annyeonghaseyo, this is Ruth from Makeupless Monday. Welcome back for your next Makeupless Monday moment. So in the month of November, I started sharing stories about my adoption because November is Adoption Awareness Month. And the last two videos I've done have been a little bit heavier topics. For example, I've done a video on racial and cultural differences when you are being adopted from one ethnicity perhaps into a family of a different ethnicity. And then I have a second video that I put out last week, which was sharing just some of the harder aspects of my adoption, particularly rehoming. So after two kind of sad videos, I thought it'd be really great to do one that is a little bit happier, and it still comes from within my own story. So it is Veterans Weekend as well, so what better time than to pull out my veteran Army stories, because yes, I am an Army veteran, both from the Indiana Army National Guard and active duty, and some of my adoption story, and share how those two kind of coincided many years ago. So I joined the military in November of 2002, and I actually joined the Indiana Army National Guard. If you don't know what that means, basically that means that I was in uniform 1 week in a month, and then every year I would pull orders for 2 weeks of active duty training. So in 2004, my unit in Indiana came across a really unique opportunity, and that was to go to South Korea for 2 weeks, where we were going to participate in Operation Ulchi Focus Lens, which to all of you civilians out there, that basically means that my unit from Public Affairs got tasked to go overseas and shoot video and write stories about the war games that the U.S. Army and the ROK Army, Republic of Korea, get together and conduct every year. When we came down on orders, I was also being offered a chance to go to the Indiana Army National Guard Recruiter School. And that recruiter school could possibly open up a full-time opportunity for me in the Indiana Army National Guard. So I was essentially given a choice whether I wanted to go on annual training, come back and turn around and go straight to Army Recruiter School, or did I just want to kind of stay and not go to Korea and work some assistant work, sort of just some pre-training in the Army National Guard. And honestly, I was this close to accepting the Indiana Army National Guard recruiter position and skip annual training that year. However, I know it seems kind of odd that I would forego an opportunity to go to Korea, and that is its own psychological problems. I had to work through all on its own. But needless to say, I did decide to go with my unit to South Korea. When people found out that I was going to South Korea, I was asked over and over and over again, well, are you going to find your family? Are you going to look for your family? And I always said, I don't think I was. There was fear from both sides. First of all, there was the practical fear of, okay, I only have 2 weeks, so it would be really difficult if I were to go start looking for my family and then just flat out run out of time. And then the second fear that was a lot more difficult back then to verbalize was the fear of rejection from my biological family. Meaning, what would happen if we did find them in 2 weeks, but they refused to see me? Because I didn't know my adoption story back then. All I knew back in 2004 was that my family couldn't afford to keep me, therefore I was placed for adoption. But I really didn't understand the circumstances. I didn't know the family history behind how that decision came about. So there was a lot of just deep-seated fear, on top of which the difficulties that I'd had with my two families in my two adoptions, I really wasn't holding out a lot of hope that my biological family would be any different for me. So I was really hesitant to even crack that door open because of the amount of rejection I had already faced. Anyway, we get to South Korea, and that entire first week, soldiers in my unit, soldiers from other units, even the Rock Army that we were working alongside. They were constantly asking, hey, are you going to find your family now that you're here? And I kept saying, nah, I don't think so. Well, towards the end of the first week, one of the sergeants from our, I guess you would call it our parent unit, because we were actually, even though we were in Indiana, we had an entire unit that we were attached to up in Michigan. So the NCO, non-commissioned officer, sat me down and was talking to me towards the end of the week about why I didn't want to find my family and why I was so resistant to the idea of even trying. So after our discussion, I decided that when I got back to the embassy on Monday, I would go ahead and place a call to Holt Adoption Agency. So I got permission from my commander, who told me that my unit would 100% support anything that I was trying to do to find my biological family. So I picked up the phone at the embassy and made my first call to Holt Adoption Agency. That phone call was really surprisingly short. Anybody, here in the United States, and when you call looking for anything, there's paperwork, identification, files, permission, all this red tape that you have to go through. In South Korea, it was, hello, this is Holt Adoption Agency. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. My birth name was Soo-young Park. I was born in February of 1983 and I was adopted. Can you help me? They were like, do you have your adoption case number? And I actually did happen to have that. So I gave them my adoption case number. And it was, okay, thank you so much. We'll let you know if we find anything. 안녕하세요. Click. Okay. Who knows what's going to happen? I call back on Tuesday and they tell me, well, guess what? We actually have your adoption files in our system. They've been entered in the computer system, and we've been able to find out that you have 2 biological older sisters. Your biological father is no longer living, but your biological mom is also still alive. Oh, by the way, you have a half older brother as well. And so my heart starts pounding, I'm shaking, and then they say, but your Oma, which is Korean for mom, Oma doesn't have a phone. So we're going to have to send her a telegram, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens. So the telegram goes out, and I call back on Wednesday, and they haven't heard anything. I call back on Thursday, and by this time, even the ROC officers are calling Holt Adoption Agency like, this girl is leaving the country on Sunday, and she needs to find her family, and you need to get on it. And Holt was just like, look, we're doing our best. We sent out a telegram. That's the absolute best we can do. So if you remember, I started this process on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm only at the embassy until Friday afternoon. Once I leave the embassy on Friday afternoon, I was going out sightseeing on Saturday and flying out of the country on Sunday. Oh, by the way, we had no cell phones, and our unit where we were staying in South Korea, we were staying in Tent City in Itaewon, had no phones. So once I left the embassy on Friday, that was it. It was 0 hour. If they don't call the embassy by Friday, there's no way to contact me again. So Thursday rolls around. ROC Army's on the phone with me. I'm calling on the phone. We called morning, afternoon, right before we left. Still hadn't heard anything. So Friday rolls around. We are scheduled to leave the embassy. I believe it was like 14 or 1500. A little bit of a shorter afternoon. Usually we would work to like 1700, 5 o'clock for the civilians. But that afternoon on Friday, we were closing and wrapping up our part of the exercise a little bit earlier. So it's around 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And that afternoon, I make my final call to the embassy. Or, I'm sorry, not to the embassy. From the embassy, I made my final call to Holt Adoption Agency. And they said, guess what? Your Oma and your older sister just walked through the door. So they had just gotten the telegram. Sorry. And the only thing that Holt said in the telegram was, hey, we have some information for you we think you might be interested in. Please meet us in Seoul at the Holt Adoption Agency if you would like to receive more information. So my mom didn't even know that I had been looking for her, that I was in country. Holt had decided just to withhold all of that information and see if Oma would even be curious. So she traveled from Daegu up to Seoul on Friday to find out what in the world Holt Adoption Agency is contacting her after 20 some years. And it just became kind of a whirlwind from there. Again, I'm still on orders to leave the country Sunday morning. So that Friday afternoon, we put together a very hasty reunion where I was going to leave Itaewon and travel by bullet train to Daegu. And in Daegu, I would meet one of the Holt Adoption Agency, I guess, caseworkers. I'm not sure what they would call them in South Korea. And she would help kind of negotiate that reunion meeting that I was going to have with my mom and my sisters on Saturday. So one of the gals and her husband from the embassy offered to come along with me as a translator because I don't speak Hangul and I wasn't sure about my mom and my sister's ability to understand and speak English. So it was really awesome that I had a translator willing to just come with us and just be a part of the story. And then my battle buddy Lynn Wilson from my unit also came with me to kind of be my battle buddy, help me emotionally through the whole process, and also take pictures of the reunion between my family and I. So I'm really grateful, by the way, to my translator out in Korea and to my battle buddy, Lynn. Hi, Lynn. And off we went on the bullet train Saturday morning. I will say that I was so terrified Friday evening that I was having really, 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 really severe anxiety attacks. The fear of rejection, reliving abandonment was just rolling, and it was something I hadn't expected. I thought that I would just be nothing but happy and excited to meet my biological family. I wasn't quite prepared or expecting the slew of unprocessed raw emotion that was coming through Friday night. But pulled it together on Saturday. We got on the bullet train, took off, and I will never forget the first time I laid eyes on my mom that I can remember in my memory, and my older sister Sangin. My whole life, and I've mentioned this in my racial cultural diversity movie video, I grew up in a very mostly heavy majority Caucasian household and culture and neighborhood, and that was just fine. But one of the things that I struggled with being adopted into an all-Caucasian family was family reunion time, when everybody would get around and naturally just, it's this normal conversation, oh, she looks like grandpa. Oh, she gets this from her aunt. This is her dad coming through. That nose, that is all bohemian. And so it's really cool to hear that for all of my other siblings in my adopted family, but nobody was ever able to say, well, Ruth looks like so-and-so in the family. Ruth's personality traits come from grandma or from her mom. So that was something that I had just kind of missed growing up with, was having a biological family tie of facial features and personality. So when I saw my mom for the first time in Daegu in the hotel and my older sister, and I saw my own face mirrored back at me, my own features, because I look very, very, very much like my mom and sisters. There was no question when everybody saw us whose daughter I was. And a huge, huge fear lifted off my shoulders immediately, because that was another fear, was that I would see my family and they'd be like, oh, she doesn't look like us. That can't be her. because Holt didn't ask for identification. They didn't ask for proof of anything. They just took my word over the phone and arranged this whole meeting. So seeing my mom for the first time and seeing my face reflected back at me through my sister and my mom was unbelievable. I still don't have words for it. So we had tea together in the hotel, and the Holt adoption caseworker thought like, hey, you know what? This has gone really, really well. So I left with my family, with my translator and my battle buddy to go and spend the rest of the day with my family in Korea. So I only got to spend that one day with them, and I had to fly back to the States the very next day. We've kept in contact over the years, and actually back in 2013, I went back to Korea for 2 full weeks to stay with my family. And just 2 summers ago, my oldest sister and my nephew came to the United States to visit me. So there is a happy reunion adoption family story for you. I'm going to put up a little bit of a slideshow at the end of this video just so you can see some of the pictures of me and my biological family in Korea. If you've ever had a chance to meet your biological family, I would love to hear your story. Send me an email or leave a comment down below. Also, you can subscribe to my Makeupless Monday video channel here on YouTube and go to my website, www.makeuplessmonday.com, to see more videos and vlogs that I've done. But in the meantime, I would encourage you just to find some people who are adopted if you can this month and just ask them their stories and experiences, and you're going to get a plethora. Some good, some sad, and some like mine, which is a complete mix of the two. But anyway, in the meantime, go forth, be bold, be makeupless, and I will see you back next week for another Makeupless Monday moment. 안녕하세요!